Sony Pictures have announced they're going to remake Starship Troopers. Let's hope they can get somebody in it that can act this time. Welcome to the Tach Impulse podcast.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
Now, I'm a little bit mean about the original Starship Troopers movie there, but it's actually a film I adore. I love that film. It was one of the very early $100 million movies, and it really did put every dollar on the screen. Some of the CGI in that film, considering how old it is now, is actually still pretty impressive today. Casper Van Dien cannot act. He is in this movie because he's kind of pretty, but he is a terrible actor. Denise Richards isn't a lot better, but Jake Busey in this movie is actually pretty good, and obviously the legend that is Clancy Brown playing Zim was amazing. Diana May is actually a very good actress playing Dizzy, and obviously Neil Patrick Harris is in this, but he's not really utilised particularly well. What a lot of people don't actually know, though, is that the Starship Troopers movie was based on a novel from 1959 with the same name, written by Robert A. Heinlein. Now, the new movie that's going to be produced by Neil Blomkamp, the guy that did District 9 many years ago, is reported that it's going to be far closer to the original novel than the movie. So, let me tell you a little bit about the novel and how it is different to the film. Because this was a novel I actually read in my youth, when I was a bit of a sci-fi nutter, as you may have noticed I still am, and that I really devoured a lot of 1950s, 1960s classic sci-fi novels. The general storyline is very similar to the movie. It does start with the battle that goes badly wrong. It then have the odd flashback to school. There are far more of those flashbacks in the novel, and in the novel it uses those flashbacks to talk about morality and to describe how this society has been formed. But in the movie, as the novel, there is federal service, and that is how you get rights to vote, etc., etc., and you become a citizen by getting that federal service. It's very militaristic in the book, as it is in the novel. To the point of being described as fascist by some parts of people that have been quite negative about the book. So, there are differences, obviously, from the book. For example, in the movie, basically, just to keep things ticking along, Rico just keeps getting promoted. And he ends up being in charge of Rico's Roughnecks at the end. Now, in the book, he does end up being in charge of Rico's Roughnecks. But he has to go back to the academy sort of thing and do officer training. He's supported by Zim through a lot of that. So it's a little bit more detail in there in the novel, which obviously is fine because the movie has to tick along. He has to tell a story. You haven't got that long sort of thing. But, the novel had a little bit more detail. The novel, talking about detail though as well, really described the military of this future really well, and actually described sort of like a robotic armoured suit, something that we've seen in movies quite recently, and we've actually seen the military in the United States trying to develop these exosuits. And this book has actually inspired several projects over the years with this technology. For example, the Tom Cruise movie, Live, Die, Repeat sort of thing, a few years ago, that had those exosuits in it, and it's very similar to what was described in the original novel. Now, there has been negativity over the novel over the years. Now, some people say that it glorifies the military, a glorified war, and that really, again, I mentioned fascism earlier, but a lot of people have described this as a fascist novel. They've got this utopian society where the leaders are wise and powerful and everyone's very prosperous and there's no poor, there's no, homelessness, etc., etc. But it seems that the military is sat over the top of that. The military is wise, the military is just, and basically it has been suggested that is quite a fascist way of looking at things. Now, when I read the book, I didn't quite get that. What I took from it was that freedom has a moral duty, and that if you're going to enjoy that freedom, it comes with an element of sacrifice. That's what I got from it. But I'm a boy, and I tend to think of things in quite black and white terms. And that's what I took from this novel, that, if you want to become a citizen, you want to vote, you want to do all these things, then you have to earn it. I don't have a problem with that, actually. Now, there are elements in this book that I don't agree with, but that's not what I took from it. And over the years, people have really torn this book apart and examined it from lots of different ways. And some people support it, some people don't. The movie, for me, wasn't glorifying war, wasn't really glorifying the military. It came across more as a warning. It was more a, look, this is what happens if you go this way. The military take over. Remembering in the book and the movie, really, even though more in the movie, it's humanity that have started this conflict with the arachnids. Now, in the books, it's sort of touched on, as I remember, but in the book, it's pretty much stated that, we've encroached on their society. There's flashbacks, isn't there? Very Paul Verhoeven sort of flashbacks of news reporters talking about, well, we attacked them first, sort of thing. That's not so much in the book, but in the movie, that's very much the way it is. So I always thought of Paul Verhoeven was far more of a, like he did in RoboCop really, is more and more of a stark warning about the future, rather than a celebration of this type of way of having society. Now, I think Neil Blomkamp, remembering District 9, think about District 9 for a second, that's a movie about social segregation. It's a movie that was based in South Africa, not by mistake. And, he really used the science fiction as a metaphor beautifully. And this is what we keep demanding on this channel, that sci-fi is a very, very good tool for talk about very, very important things. District 9 is about freedom, it's about segregation, it's about culture, it's about equality. But it's also about poo and aliens and stuff. So it's an entertaining way of considering a lot of these issues in society today. I imagine he will use this material to do something similar, in which case I don't see how it's quite going to be closer to the book than the movie. Now, for me, the movie was more pew than maybe the book. The book is a bit more serious, even though there are very serious parts of this movie. When Dizzy is killed, to be fair, is decent. It's a properly dramatic moment in the movie. As I said, if Casper Van Dien could, Casper Van Dien could actually act, it would have been much better. But he can't. But on the whole, I always felt that the movie was slightly comic booky, maybe, or it was a Paul Verhoeven movie, very much like RoboCop, quite gory in places, lots of CGI, lots of special effects, lots of action, lots of excitement, less moral, less social commentary, less of that sort of thing, which the book is very heavy on. The book, the writer, Heinlein, really had something to say. Remember, he'd been in the military himself. A lot of his descriptions of the boot camp and stuff were from his own experiences. I think what we're going to see with Neil Blomkamp's version of this will be far more gritty and darker than maybe the Starship Troopers movie, where we got to see Denise Richards in that uniform, which I like quite a lot. Another thing about Starship Troopers, though, I loved the starship designs in that movie. They were submarine-y, and it had that top section that was reminiscent of the command section of a aircraft garage. I think it was very, very well designed starship. And if ever we talk about starships on this channel, which we will at some point, it's going to have to be up there in one of the more realistic starship designs, or at least that felt realistic. I love that design. Get to the comments and tell me what you think of the starship design in Starship Troopers. The dropships I thought were quite realistic and quite well done as well. But how do you feel about them doing a closer to the novel version of Starship Troopers, something that will feel different to the original movie? Or, actually, is this a film that doesn't really need to be redone? I would argue the original's still pretty good. I know they're going to go in a slightly different way with it, but I think we should be celebrating Paul Verhoeven's version. The one thing that's nice about this, though, is that people will go back and watch that movie because of the remake. So, yeah, maybe it's a two-win thing. I don't know. But get into the comments and tell me what you think. Don't forget that if you are new to the channel, to like, subscribe with that bell notification. It really helps us out, and you'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you can go to patreon.com/Scitrek, where a lot of our videos from our other channels do premiere first. Go check it out. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.